Well, I think power is the biggest issue. I'm always surprised when there's, let's say, an election in like right now, they just had an election in Afghanistan, right? And it's being disputed. And I often wonder, well, why can't one person just go, you know what, it's better, even if I think I probably won, it's better to say, okay, look, you just go ahead and take it, because if we start fighting over this, there's going to be a lot of people dying. So just to save all those lives, okay, I don't have to be in power this time. Go ahead. I don't think everything is going to collapse because I let you have power. To me, that would just make so much more sense. I don't understand why somebody would say, I have to be the one. I'm the one who won this election fair and square. You cheated. I'm going to raise hell until I get my way. Until everything has been justice has been served, and I'm really the one who's going to be the leader, and blah blah blah. Is it worth it?
More and more that as time goes by, I think that the solutions are far simpler. When people say it's really complicated or it's a really long history, I think that's just a euphemism for they don't understand it or don't want to be bothered to know. I remember when I went to Palestine in 2005 and I heard Dr. Mitri Raheb, who is the Christian pastor at the International Center for Bethlehem, he said that Palestinians are investing all of these resources into creative and cultural frameworks because they feel as a society that the solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem was a creative one. And that you had to teach that from a very young age.
I remember that movement of trying to do artistic things with children, to have them get into that mindset, basically, and ultimately relying on artists to find the solution to a problem that's been plaguing politics since since Israel was created. I'm talking about after World War II. It hasn't been found in politics, so possibly it's artists that are going to have to find a solution that's going to be beyond the thinking of the usual people that are asked to think about this.
It makes me think of back in the late 90s and early 2001 too, especially when HD just started coming to be in the professional space and making its way down to more utilitarian uses, that there was this fear that photography was going to be of no use because you could grab single stills and make that the photograph, and there was no longer this decisive eye.
When you shot when you clicked the shutter.
Right, but in fact, photography has become pervasive because cameras went into phones, and it's everywhere now. If photography is under threat, it's only under threat because there's so much of it. All that technology has made the image in a photograph or a video free, like in the way paintings are free to say something besides a literal translation. This is a vase of flowers, or the representation of a vase of flowers. Photography has unnecessarily suffered for too long with being truth. It has never been the truth.
Being documentation.
Exactly, but documentation still wasn't reality, but it looked like reality.
We were fooled into thinking that if something was photographed or shot with film or video, that it was in fact reality, and so it was proof. It could hold up in a courtroom, perhaps, at some point, maybe even now not so much because it can be manipulated digitally so easily. But right, you could actually bring that as evidence to a courtroom as, yes, that actually happened.
Right.
You're right. So I oftentimes want to make digital work that's going to stand up against traditional artwork, the masterworks throughout history, paintings, for instance, sculpture. And I wonder what's finally going to be the digital works that are considered the masterworks, that are considered timeless, that are going to be considered something that no matter what media you show this in, it's always going to be considered a master work. Where is that? Is it possible? Or is video or is digital art ice sculptures?
So you're a new media artist and a new media professor, and you're still wondering if new media can hold up to a Renaissance painting?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it your insecurity because you feel you're cheating somehow by
No.
it being numbers and code or
No,
something?
no. An oil painting, for example, is something that needs nothing to be seen except for light shining on it. So it'll create an image in your eyeballs. Whereas media art always needs a device of some kind, or else it just exists, it's really invisible, it's inside of a chip or a hard drive or something like that. It's completely invisible, so it always needs something. And the something that it needs is constantly being made obsolete by the next generation of whatever that is. For example, internet art, net art, right? Most of it doesn't work these days from, say, circa 1995 because the browsers don't operate that way any longer. So then I need an entire machine just to show that piece, and that machine eventually will stop working and you won't be able to get the parts at some point.
Well, for me, I've collaborated a lot over the last decade and plus with you in graduate school, and it works really well, and sometimes it works very poorly because some people who are inside of a collaboration, well, mainly, that collaboration can enhance and make something grow, or it can be the most watered down production ever to make people agree. So that instead of taking a risk that you would do as an individual to see what will happen and experiment, that to make a group or two people agree, you have to push out all the good ideas and just say, okay, I accept that. And I was in a collective with your wife, actually, and a group of women artists that the only reason why we kept cooperating is because we were working with disenfranchised voices from Palestine, young women. And that was the thread that
held you guys together.
That held us together, but it was so frustrating that there was so little that could be done in order for personalities and egos to be minimized. And sometimes artists have a very healthy ego.
So one of the things that we haven't really talked about is something that went along with diatribes.
When we first showed it?
When we first showed it, was the fifth box, which was supposedly an interactive piece where people would respond to diatribes, and this response would get recorded and become a piece within itself. And it didn't really work out so well.
And then so we conceived of the fifth box, which we had a booth that you and I created in a separate space of the museum, and the audience was invited to come speak into a microphone, and there were questions on the wall, and they were responding to this highly political exhibition.
And it's not necessarily a thought out intellectual emergence out of somebody's mind that they really have to speak about something because they've been moved in a certain way. I think that happens naturally. I think people will have conversations about things maybe after the fact, maybe hours later, maybe days later. They might talk to each other and say, that thing that we saw, that really makes me think that it's very much like what's happening at this moment or something like that. Things will emerge. I think when you try and do it inorganically, when you're trying to create a situation where you expect it to happen, it doesn't succeed. I've yet to see that succeed very well. It reminds me of the comments that happen after online when you watch a news story, they'll put a place for comments. And you look at those comments and...
They're the worst.
It's terrible. It's usually just people arguing over whether something is true or not true, or one point of view versus another.
A lot of the trolls will come out and say this very racist stuff.
Right. You almost get the worst in people coming out.
So instead of being so navel-gazing about your experience or your trouble in life, but what are other people's issues? It's strange that my son, who is in junior high, has to go through classes in his school that teaches him about digital social etiquette.
It's interesting, when we were shooting diatribes, we were interviewing each other, you said a lot of things that were very prophetic. And one of the things you said was that this war with Iraq, it wasn't just going to be over when the shooting stops. This is going to be this smoldering thing where people are going to keep fighting, and there's no clear ending to this. And you were absolutely right, because here it is, 10, almost 11 years later, and it's flared up in a very big way again. I mean, I suppose it's been flaring and dying down and flaring and dying down over the years.
And we're sitting here making a project in the middle of one of the worst days since 9/11, you know, with as many spaces of conflict happening at once and many civilians dying at once. And the great thing is we're in dialogue and we're talking, and that is heads and shoulders better than any other thing that we can be doing
Yeah,
at this moment.
that's true.